Hi everyone, welcome to the first new review, solo review, on the Broken Meeple for Season 3. And as you'll notice from the introduction, this has been sponsored by Zatu Games. Zatu Games are a retailer that I buy some of my games from in the UK. Not all, other retailers are available, but they have kindly sponsored me with this review copy of the game I'm doing today, which is the Gugong. I hope that's how you pronounce it. Published by Game Brewery and designed by Andreas Stedding. So I'm still going to be pointing out pros and cons in this game. Just because it's sponsored by somebody does not mean I don't give my honest opinion.
The first duty of every Starfleet officer is to the truth, whether it's scientific truth or historical truth or personal truth.
Just so you're aware, that was what the intro at the start of the video was all about. So what is the Gugong? It is a relatively new Euro game, which is set in a sort of historical China, and you're effectively trying to, well, what a surprise, get victory points.
Of course!
So in the Gugong, you are taking on the role of a wealthy Chinese family. You want an audience with the Emperor, because if you don't get an audience, you will lose the game outright. But in doing so, you are going to all these different locations in order to build up your influence throughout China. This can be from anything from helping to construct the Great Wall, collecting jade, going on travels, taking advantage of royal decrees, sailing across the Grand Canal, that kind of thing. And the main mechanic revolves around exchanging gifts. You have a selection of cards available numbered from 1 to 9, and the locations have a card on them as well. Each location has its own action, but the cards have an action as well. What you're trying to do is that you're exchanging a card from your hand with one that's at the location in order to do what you want to do at the location. But depending on the values exchanged, dictates on how much of that you're able to do. Because if you take a value 7, for example, and only give back a 2, you've got to pay some additional costs in order to do that, because you've basically been stingy with your gift and you've taken something of higher value back. But if you're generous with your gift, so I only take a 2 card but I gave an 8, you get to do more of the actions you want to do without sacrificing anything else. It's an interesting concept and one that I don't see a lot in other Euro games. But basically each round you will have a different selection of cards, and you will have a little resource of servant cubes that you need in order to power various actions, and you'll take it in turns to exchange these cards on the locations, gain victory points, and eventually the one with the most is the winner. Now you might think that a little bit of a brief overview, but that's kind of the style I'm going for. You've got Board Game Geek, you've got other resources available, but I just try to give a brief overview of what it is you're doing in the game, because I have my own system now for how to go into the game into more detail. So let's go into detail with an anagram of detail. Yeah, that's not exactly the most original idea, but it's one that works for me. Trust me, do you know how hard it is to try and come up with a decent anagram and find a title for each of the letters? It's not easy. So detail begins with D, and for that, the duration. The duration of the game. I don't like it when games go on too long, so does the game give you enough engagement for the time you're expected to play it for? The box says 90 minutes, and I hate it when the box says 90 minutes flat, because this goes from 1 to 5 players. I guarantee you it's not 90 minutes with all those player counts. But 90 minutes is not that unrealistic an assumption, actually. I don't think you're going to be finishing this in the likes of 60 minutes or anything like that, but 90 minutes to 2 hours is kind of where you're expecting to be, and that's actually a decent length for the game. You don't get into a position where you think, okay, the game's gone on too long, I think we've had our fill, we can end it now or something. If it dragged beyond 2 hours, I'd be a bit, not a huge fan here, but normally 2 hours is about as high as you want to go, with the caveat that you cap the players a little bit. I mean, this goes from 1 to 5, and I don't necessarily recommend playing with too many players because the time will drag out like crazy. But with 3 to 4 players, a good sweet spot, 3, I know, broken record, it does keep to a good 90 minutes to 120. E stands for ease of play. Now with ease of play, it's a case of how easy is it to get into the game, I mean, forget about whether it's like, oh my god, I can't, think of what I'm supposed to do on my turn. It's how easy is it to get immersed into it? Not too difficult, actually. The rules here are, pretty well written. It didn't take me long to learn the game, and the whole concept of exchanging the cards doesn't take too long to grasp either. There are some hard elements, though, which are a bit of a barrier to entry. Firstly, knowing what you're supposed to be doing well is going to take a couple of games for you to really learn. Your first game is going to be a learning game, I think, because the learning curve is a little bit high. You're exchanging these cards. Oh, great. Was it worth doing that? Was it worth giving up a value of that with the value of this? It's hard to kind of think at the end of the day. But the biggest barrier to entry is the sheer amount of iconography everywhere. There is little to no text on this. In fact, the board has no text whatsoever, and nor does your player board. Pretty much no text. And that's good and bad. Some people prefer to learn by iconography. I know I do, but there's a lot here that is just peppered with iconography. In fact, your player board, most of it you don't even use. It's mainly just telling you what the turn sequences are and the actions you can do based on iconography. And they're not the most intuitive icons either. So your first game, you are going to be looking at the board, trying to remind yourself, okay, what does that icon do? What does that icon do? What's that icon do? Oh, I can't remember. It's like I say, your first game, I think it's going to be a learning game for sure, and then you'll get into it in future games. Not to say that this is overly complex. I mean, this is meant to be a kind of mid-weight Euro, and I think it fits that sort of category quite well. But I would certainly just be aware that you're going to have to be used to iconography in your games, and that don't try to min-max your first game. Just go through the motions, enjoy the mechanics, and you should do all right. E stands for tactics/strategy. Yes, I know, a bit of a cheat, but oh well, my review, I get to do what I like. So, tactics, strategy. Is there a lot of that in this game? You know, is it just a random luck fest? You know, will it keep you engaged? Well, there is a decent amount of tactics and strategy here, no word of a lie. You've got to think long term about what sort of things you're aiming for. You can't just do a bit of everything, because you probably won't score enough doing that. So you might focus on a couple of the things, particularly like, I'm really going to go travelling on the canal and the river. There's my two goals. Maybe I'm going to concentrate on building the Great Wall and collecting jade, you know, that kind of thing. And you know, you've definitely got that long-term strategy, but the tactics can really open up here with those cards, because the board state may change to an extent where you think, well, I don't really want to go to that location because there's an 8 card there. I can't exchange a gift for that. I won't be able to do anything. And oh, okay, he's just gone, and now there's a 3 there. You know, possibilities. These open up each turn. Now, there is a slight downside about this when you up the player count, though. I mentioned 3 as a sweet spot because it doesn't scale that well for the interaction with those cards. There is a bit of player interaction in the sense that everyone's changing what those cards are, but the problem is if you have too few players, i.e. play with 2 to be honest, you don't get enough of that change of the cards. The cards feel fairly static. The problem is, if you then play with 5 players, you might as well zone out on half of the turns that take place, because by the time it gets back round to you, chances are half of that board state, if not more, has already changed dramatically with the cards. So any plan that you had originally probably just kind of got scuppered. And, you know, that can lead to a bit of analysis paralysis. You know, it does cause a few issues with high player counts. So that's why I say 3 and 4 are kind of the sweet mix. You know, quick players with 4, you know, or a normal game with 3. But like I say, there is decent amount of that tactical thinking, reacting to how the board state changes, you know, noticing who's higher than you on the intrigue track, you know, which is a way of getting more bonuses, you know, who's on the travel space in front of you, you know, did someone just jump in front of you and grab a bonus? Well, hang on a minute, if I move my traveller a couple of spaces, you have to skip other people. So maybe, now that he's moved in front of me, I can leap over him and reach that city I wanted to go to. So there's a lot of that interaction from the other players. Not direct interaction per se. It's kind of like most Euros. It's indirect. But you do have to pay attention to what the other players are doing. You know, what are they aiming for? Are they likely to go to a location you want? Do you think they have the cards to use the location that you want? Maybe if you put a really high card down, will that scupper them, or will they just go there anyway? A lot of these decisions go through your head to make this probably one of the most in-depth mid-weight games I've played, in a good way. It certainly does keep you on your toes, and there's very little downtime for you to sit there and just not think at all, because you need to have a backup plan. You cannot go into a turn not prepared for the worst to happen. And so that means that even with a few players, the downtime is kept to a reasonable level. But again, 5 is probably pushing it for a decent game. A stands for aesthetics. Yes, aesthetics are important, I mean, you're paying, a normal amount of money for this game, actually. Value-wise, it's pretty good, but, you want it to look good for that money. And, well, does the cover not give you an indication? It's a very nice cover. It's a linen finished box, which is, pretty nice and shiny. But nah, all in all, production is pretty good for this, actually. The board artwork's very good. The graphic design, as much as there's a lot of iconography, is still done pretty well. It looks very colourful, there's all sorts of, just looking at the board, you've got the vibrant green landscape of China in the background with mountain regions and the canals. The cards are bright red, they stand out on the board so they don't blend into everything. Green jade pearls, the tracks are easy to spot. All in all, it's a solid production, even if you do have to put up with the fact that your servants are cubes. I mean, why does it have to be cubes? But all in all, pretty solid. Chunky cardboard tiles, mostly cardboard chits around the place. You can get a Kickstarter deluxe version of this, not in a store, I don't think, but some people have got this like gold box that's got fancier components in that. And I gotta admit, that's a very beautiful box. And a very beautiful game inside. But don't feel that you need to have it. It is mainly cosmetic upgrades. The retail version of this still looks pretty nice. I'm not going to say that I bought this game and feel I got cheated out of the money I spent on it. So all in all, looks nice, decent components, pretty all-round solid aesthetics. I stands for the integration of theme. How well does the theme come out in the game? How does it portray? Do you feel immersed in it? And I know some of you are thinking, I don't care about theme, rabble. I do. I care about theme, and I know some others out there do. But if you don't like theme, you can always just skip to the next segment. With this one, the theme's actually relatively strong, I think, for what is mainly a mechanical Euro game. It's not to say that you feel like a Chinese emperor when you play this or anything like that. But the artwork and the way that the mechanics are derived does make sense from that period of time. It's all about that gift giving. That is kind of what they did. It was all about the exchange of gifts rather than just straight out money. And I like some of the thematic touches that they have thrown in. One in particular I liked was the rulebook gives an exception to the rule for the exchanging of the gift cards, because normally you want yours to be higher value than the one you take. But there's an exception that you can freely exchange the 1 and the 9. And you think, well, why is that? Why is the 1 suddenly good against the 9? Well, it's because the 1, I believe, was the fruit. It was a fruit gift. And the rulebook actually specifically states that in those days, that fruit, as much as it's not the rarest thing in the world, some fruit was exotic enough that some people just were willing to give more than they needed to just to be the ones to say, I've got this fruit at my dinner, look at me, I've got mangoes or something, I don't know, whatever fruit was around that time. And that just shows that there was a bit more thought into the theme than otherwise I would have expected. I mean, I was going into this thinking, well, I mean, you've painted a nice picture of a Chinese emperor on the front and you called it the Gugong and put some Chinese writing on the front. I assume that's Chinese for Gugong, I'm not entirely sure. But I thought, is this just going to be dry and mechanical? And it's not entirely. I mean, you've got the Grand Canal, you've got the Great Wall, you've got visiting other players, you've got jade as a resource. Granted, you're still exchanging cards and doing weird manipulation with that. And you do have these, I feel that this is a bit of a weak link. They added these like destiny dice in there. You roll these dice at the start of a round, and if your cards that you've discarded match the values on them, you get more stuff. I suppose that is more into the theme of the whole destiny thing, but yeah, I felt that was a little bit tacked on as a mechanic. But, all in all, the theme comes out in this game. Not stupidly strong, not stupidly like, oh my god, it's dripping with theme, but they at least made a decent attempt to make this not just feel like another generic Euro. We've seen enough of these like medieval style themes of like boring Renaissance paintings and stuff where again, it's all just very boring mechanics. No, this one actually made an attempt to bring out some of that theme. So I give it kudos for that. Finally, L stands for the longevity, or the replay value, to put it in another phrase. Longevity is like, how often am I going to bring this back to the table? Will it stand the test of time? And of course, it's hard to do that when I've only just got the game. Talk to me in a year, maybe. But I think there's enough tactics and strategy that's going to make people want to come back for more. but there is a decent amount of replay value in the decree tokens that you get, and the traveller bonuses. The traveller bonuses, I don't think you use them all, but if you do, they're still randomised on the board, so they create different situations for those who want to go out travelling. But on top of that, the decree tiles, the ones that give bonuses, like, special abilities during the game, but also give victory points, there's a lot of them, and I don't think you use every single one of them either. So more decrees, different decrees happening each game, will basically, increase the replay value for that. And if they want to expand the game, all they'll need to do is just add some more decree tiles, add some more bonus tiles, and everything will be hunky-dory. So it does do a good job of that. Certainly, that's kind of the only thing that really changes though. I mean, the cards are all the same, you use every single card, the locations are still the same, the way that you play the game is still effectively the same. So the only sense of replay value you're getting is mainly the variation aspect, it's just the decree tiles and the bonus tiles. But I think that there's a decent amount of depth and strategy in this game that I think you're going to want to revisit it every now and again, because like I say, your first game is going to be a learning game. You're not going to be doing that phenomenally well in your first game without some bit of luck involved. But you'll want to come back to it and think, well, what can I do differently? What if I tried the Great Wall more often? What if I tried travelling more often? There's a different amount of paths to victory, and I feel that's going to impress a lot of people. I did mention a little bit about the Palace of Purity, where you have to get to the far end of this palace track in order to not lose the game outright. Don't read too much into that, because yes, you have to do it, otherwise you lose. I've yet to see anyone lose by that. You can easily get to the end of that track. It's just a case of whether you'll get to the end first and have more points as a result. That's the only risk that track has. I've never seen anybody lose outright to it. I think that if you lose outright by not reaching the end of that track, you've been playing pretty badly, or people just blocked you like crazy and it didn't go your way, because there's loads of different ways you can advance on it. And that's a shame. I would have liked, to up the replay value a bit, I would have liked for that to have been more of a factor. I mean, Cleopatra and the Society of Architects behind me, fantastic corruption mechanic. Have the most corruption at the end, you lose outright, and you're not entirely sure if you have the most or not at any one time. So, that would have been great in this, and I thought I was going to get that, but sadly not, and that's a slight letdown, but it's a minor quibble. It doesn't detract from the rest of the game, which is an overall solid game. And if you're like me and enjoy a good solo game every now and again, there is a solo mode in this as well, which is decent. I mean, it's not the best solo mode ever, it's fairly normal, what you would expect, but again, putting a solo mode in a Euro game means that you have a means of playing it, even if you can't get a group together, and that's always a good thing. So overall, I really quite like this game. It's something, it feels different from a lot of other Euro games. This mechanic of exchanging the gifts and the cards, it just opens up a lot of opportunities, a lot of different paths, and a lot of different tactics. The gameplay feels fluid. You can't just simply go, right, well, I know I'm going to do this next turn, and this next turn. No, because the cards will change. Your hand will change different rounds. The location bonus tiles might get scooped up, and the intrigue track positions, the Great Wall might get finished earlier than you expected. You have to pay attention to other players, and you can't just stick to one rigid goal the entire game. And that sort of thing pulls me into a Euro. I like it when the tactics sort of confuse the game a little bit. Like, I had a game plan, but now I got to look out at these opportunities, and it's like, ooh, that could be good, that could be juicy, maybe I could do that instead. Ooh, plotting. And that stuff really gets me going for a Euro game. I have played better Euro games in terms of, there are some like Caverna and that where you have a lot of options and there's a bit of tactics and strategy involved, and those ones I kind of prefer. But overall, Gugong is a solid package. Main quibbles, lots of iconography, just a bit hard to sort of get your head around the first game, and I do wish that whole thing about losing the game outright was a bit more of a factor in this game. I don't think it's quite as prominent as it really needed to be, and considering how little of a price difference there was between the normal and the deluxe version from the Kickstarter, why didn't they just make them all that level of production quality? I don't get why you had to go to that level. But again, it's mainly just cosmetic, and aesthetically, the game is still pretty beautiful. So overall, Gugong, pretty solid. For me, I give it about an 8, a comfortable 8. I'm going to hang on to this game. It's going to sit in my collection. In fact, now that I've just moved my Dominion collection to a big box, I now have a space on my shelf right there, where this is gonna go. Here you go, Gugong. Into the shelf you go. So, solid, decent Euro from Game Brewery. Check it out, the Gugong. That's it from me. I'll see you on the next review, whether it's sponsored by Asmodee, Satu Games, or just one of my own. Remember, as always though, always remember this key phrase. It's only a game. Take care, and I'll see you next time.